In this evening where we're fellowshipping together over dinner. One thing about Pentecostals, we know how to enjoy a good plate of food and fellowship, don't we? I want to ask Johnny to come because I know some of you want to hear, all of you want to hear a little bit about what's going on with construction. Johnny's met with the board a few times and pastor. So Johnny, you want to share with us a minute there, what's going on there?
Well, y'all have to put up with this pretty voice now. We've met a few times, as Brother Bruce said, with the board and the pastor. And see, I've been dealing with the Spanish church in Houston, and they say pastor. They don't say pastor, they say el pastor. So we've been meeting several times. I've spoken with the city, the county, and the state. We feel like we've made good headway. We've got a set of drawings that are, I would say, from an architectural and design standpoint, we're probably 90% done. In our last meeting with Pastor said, I want a cross on the front of the church. I want people to see the cross when they pull up. So we've added a cross to the front of the church. In our last board meeting, somebody said that fellowship hall ain't big enough. So we're expanding the size of the fellowship hall. So I want to share with you just for a couple of minutes. And again, Bruce is kind enough because he knows how much I love being a part of what goes on in these meetings. It's difficult. It's not difficult for me. It's difficult for you all to have to listen to this. But if you'll bear with me just for a second, I want to talk to you about how that what we're doing here tonight, leading up to this whole process, through this campaign, it ties into two things. Our construction ties into it, but we're also tying into the Word of God. Now, rather than start to preach, and that really gets bad because, listen, I run out of air. When you don't have but one vocal cord, when you open your mouth, you can't control the air. So I learned that when I jumped in my pool. You can't hold your nose unless you can't hold your breath unless you hold your nose. So I'm not going to preach, but I want to read a passage to you because I think it's very important. This was in our bulletin, or excuse me, our flyers that we had. This passage was in there. And if you haven't gotten a chance to read it, you need to. It's in 1 Chronicles chapter 29, and I'm going to start at verse 2. I'm going to read the first 5 chapters, and then we'll... Everybody laughed but Bruce. No, I'm just going to read a few verses. Now for the house of my God. By the way, this is King David talking to the children of Israel. He says, now for the house of my God, I have prepared with all my might. Remember that for a second. With all my might, gold for things to be made of gold, silver for things of silver, bronze for things of bronze, iron for iron, wood for wood, onyx stones, stones to be set, glistening stones of various colors, all kinds of precious stones and marble, slabs in abundance. This is just David saying, this is because I've set my eye. Right, yeah. Because I've set my eye on this house of the Lord. With all my might, he said. This is what he gave. And moreover, David said, because I have set my affection. That's right. When you're affectionate about something, you're serious about it. Right. Yes. When you were dating your wives, guys, before they were your wives, you were probably a lot more affectionate. And I'll just leave it right there. David said, I've set my affection on the house of the Lord. I'm going to stop and just keep reading. I have given to the house of my God over and above all that I have prepared. Go down to verse 4. 3,000 talents of gold. And I'm not even going to read all the rest of it. Silver, thousands, 7,000 talents of silver. 7,000 talents. But here's the part that's cool. When David spoke this to the children of Israel, what he was doing was speaking to the leaders of the children of Israel. He was speaking to this group of people. The folks that are leading the church, the folks that are leading the congregation, the people that are doing the work when folks come in. Listen to this. Then the leaders of the fathers' houses, leaders of the tribes of Israel, the captains, the officers over the king's work, they offered willingly. Willingly. They gave for the work of the house of God 5,000 talents, 10,000 derricks. What's a derrick? It's a bunch. You go to verse 9 and it says, then the people rejoiced, for they had offered willingly, because with a loyal heart they offered willingly to the Lord. And King David also rejoiced greatly. I'm going to stop because I don't want to stay all night talking about this. But if you go on through that passage and you read through it, you'll learn that the king had to stand before the very same bunch of people and say, I've run out of room to store the stuff. For God's sake, don't bring any more gold. Really? Yeah, I mean, please, don't bring any more silver. Please, for the love of God, don't bring anything else. That's what he said. Read it for yourself. He said, I'm out of room. All the storehouses are full. All the rooms are full. See, what we're doing is a biblical precedent. It's a biblical standard. If we step up and do just like the children of Israel, the leaders of the children of Israel did in front of King David, our congregation and our community, guess what happens? It's a biblical precedent. They'll follow suit. They'll follow us. So don't take my word for it. When you get a chance tonight and you're sitting around, by the way, I love that song. Thank you. When you're sitting around, read 1 Chronicles 29. And then, of course, you're going to be bumped over into 2 Chronicles. I think that's the last chapter in the book. Yeah, and read the first chapter, 2 Chronicles. It'll bless you. Thanks so much.